Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is brought to you by Rayovac.
Let's check the latest right now on Hurricane Erika, a very powerful hurricane. The 5 o'clock advisory is in, and its center of circulation is at 25.9 north, 61.3 west, or about 485 miles to the south-southeast of Bermuda right now. Top sustained winds 125, and again we're looking at some gusts even higher than that. It is still drifting on to the north at about 13 miles per hour. Seems to be slowing up just a tad, and the pressure still continues to fall, which means we still have a very healthy hurricane. Thankfully, it's right out into the mid-Atlantic right now. It is down to 946 millibars, but because of Hurricane Erika, we could be looking at some dangerous riptides today just about anywhere along the East Coast, from central Florida across the Carolinas especially, maybe as far northward as around Long Island by about this time tomorrow. We've got a very pretty satellite picture we can show you. Look at the eye of the hurricane right there, again moving on toward the north, maybe just a smidgen east of due north right now, and you can see it's well away from the east coast of the United States, which is some very, very good news. And with another trough of low pressure now beginning to dig into the eastern part of the country and intensify, that will definitely steer this storm, this hurricane, away from the coastline of the United States. Nothing more to worry about with that. Even looks like Bermuda is going to be missing it too. It should be passing to the east of Bermuda within the next couple of days as well. We'll show you the enhanced satellite picture this morning. Again, lots of deep reds, which means deep convection, lots of showers and thunderstorms right around the center of circulation. This is the eye of the hurricane right there. Great outflow as well. So again, we've got some great lifting motions right now. We've got the thunderstorms beginning to tower on up, and they're being evacuated again by high pressure loft, and you can see that great outflow right there in this satellite picture, and the convection continues, which means we still have a very healthy hurricane. Let's show you what's going on as far as heavy surf advisories out right now. Basically for the U.S. Virgin Islands and also for Puerto Rico, they are noted there by the green shading. And again, you can see just about everything else has been dropped for the islands now, as the hurricane is really moving on to the northeast at a pretty good pace away from the islands right now, which were just brushed by Erika anyway. Let's take a look at the satellite. The water vapor loop for you right here. Of course, this is the hurricane right in through here. And again, we can see our building trough low pressure over the eastern part of the country. Here comes another batch of clouds, stronger westerly winds in the mid and upper levels, which means it looks like Erika again is going to be booted more on towards the east in time during the next couple of days. Should be recurving more towards the northeast as opposed to moving just due northward, maybe picking up some more speed as well. Otherwise, you can also show you that we're going to be tracking an area of low-level convection, maybe a low-level swirl over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. We've been monitoring that for a couple of days now, and we may send in a hurricane hunter a little bit later on today and see what's happening down here. But right now it looks like a lot of convection has been lost, but did look rather ominous 24 hours ago. We thought we may have something brewing over the western or southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Let's show you what's going on right now. There's the hurricane up through here, and you can see we've got another wave trying to organize and move its way on towards the west, but again it's being inhibited right now by the outflow of a very strong Category 3 Hurricane Erika, which is now moving on toward the north at about 13 miles per hour. Farther east we go. Let's see
what's the location of it, or as of 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight or Atlantic Standard Time this morning, 435 miles southeast of Bermuda. Winds 125 miles an hour, north-northeast movement at 15 miles an hour, and the pressure 951 millibars. That was after 11 a.m. We just recently got that in the last hour. So you can see the trend has been off to the east of the northerly direction, and that's very good news for folks, the landlubbers. You've been getting some surf, some seas and rip currents in Florida yesterday, and more in South and North Carolina today. Maybe even Cape Cod getting a little bit of a seas effect before this goes out completely. But it is still holding its own as it cruises off just to the east of north. Bermuda located right about here, so you really don't have to worry too much. As you can see, that movement crossing the 60th meridian of longitude. It may just hug that 60 for a while as a trough develops over the U.S., but no threat to land right now, even Bermuda. And probably the Canadian Maritimes will not have anything to worry about, but we'll keep an eye on it. Now back to Bob.
Thanks a lot, Bob.
The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
Well, we continue to watch this afternoon a very powerful hurricane out here in the Atlantic. It's Erika, but it's out in the mid-Atlantic. That's the good news. It's moving towards the north-northeast now, faster than it was, about 15 miles an hour. Still 125 miles an hour, although we can begin to see a little bit of evidence now that it may have peaked out. The pressure is up a little bit. It's up to 951 millibars. And we expect to see it continue this path a little bit east of due north, and that's certainly good news for Bermuda, because we right now don't think that we'll get any closer than, say, a couple or 100 miles or so away from Bermuda. But this is a very powerful hurricane, and of course it's already generated some swells that are going to be moving in there. And there you can see the eye, certainly well defined, still right in the middle just about of what we call the central dense overcast. That tells us it continues to be very well organized. And I'm not sure you can see it up there. Right up there is Bermuda, and so once again, we do think that the hurricane is going to pass well to the east of there, and that certainly is good news. But this hurricane is so large and so powerful, even though it's 1,500 miles or so away from the United States East Coast, there are some swells that have already been generated by these strong winds, and these waves leave this area of the hurricane and they reach the East Coast as long swells, and folks can see them on the East Coast. We noticed even yesterday around Daytona Beach that the surf was up, and it's going to be the case all the way along the coast. We've even got some indication that the surf is coming up as far north as Long Island, but generally speaking, because it's so far away, we don't consider this to be much of a problem. But if you're out there swimming, watch out, and watch out for any notices on riptides and so on. Looking at the bright reds now, it looks a little bit more ragged perhaps around the edges than it looked before, but right around the center, it appears to us as it moves on to the north-northeast at 15 miles an hour, it is still very well organized indeed. Now the trough along the east coast that we've been following is beginning to lift out a little bit. We can see a high in the upper atmosphere here over the storm, a lot of that generated by the storm itself. And notice here in the western Gulf of Mexico, where we have a little area we've been watching, we seem to have a pretty good flow of air there from the north, so we don't really expect to see anything get developed there in the Gulf. On out east of the islands, we have a couple of very weak tropical waves, and very weak is certainly the operative word, because we don't have any convection to speak of around the center on either one of these, and therefore we're not looking for anything, certainly not in the near future. And if you look off farther west off the coast of Africa, here's yet another tropical wave that's come off the Cape Verde Islands. That not showing any signs of organization either. So the bottom line out in the Atlantic is that even though we're right in what is historically the busiest part of the Cape Verde hurricane season, we really don't see anything following Erika that has any potential, for the time being anyway, to develop. So that's good news for a lot of folks who follow the tropics in the summertime. Now down here in the Gulf of Mexico, we continue to see in the Bay of Campeche a concentration of clouds. A little bit of evidence down there of a counterclockwise rotation, but notice how these clouds are streaming off rapidly to the southeast, and that's because in the upper atmosphere we have strong winds from the northwest, and that is not a scenario we don't think is going to allow this to develop very much. Even though as we zoom in on this, we do see quite a concentration of showers there. That's an area that's going to be monitored, but once again, we don't think anything is likely to come from there right away. Now another, down here several hundred miles south of the Manzanillo, we do have a system that is getting developed, we think, and fairly rapidly. We think we might have a tropical depression there, perhaps even sometime today. And another little disturbed area out to the southwest of that, not showing much of any signs of getting older.
All right, you two. This time you're in big trouble.
It's prison.
Miss Beebe!
Get me some bug spray.
Yes, Miss Beebe.
So what are you waiting for?
The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
And let's get you updated now on Hurricane Erika. Fortunately, just taking a glancing blow late last week to the northern Leeward Islands. You had some wind, some rain, 45, 50 mile an hour wind gust. And now we can say, hey, we don't have to deal with this much longer. And in fact, the only thing we're dealing with is the kind of the offshoot of the system, sending tremendous swell where waves are being generated and they're propagating towards the coast. And there has been quite a bit of surf today from the Carolina beaches, the Cape Hatteras, Outer Banks area, all the way down to the beaches of Florida. And that will continue probably tomorrow. So again, check with the local lifeguards on those riptides. Hurricane Erika, as of 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, located well south-southeast, rather east-southeast of Bermuda. It's still moving north-northeast. It's picked up some forward speed, and it's also begun to fill a little bit more. The pressure has come up 4 millibars during the evening time, a sign that Erika is very slowly weakening. However, we do not expect any rapid change in Erika as far as strength until sometime along about Wednesday night or Thursday as it starts to interact here with the colder water of the North Atlantic. Sustained winds still 120 miles an hour, down 5 since 5 Eastern, and that still makes it a Category 3 hurricane. So Erika, again, just want to update you, this is about as close as it will get to Bermuda, and even those of you in Bermuda will get nothing more than those big waves from Erika. So we've been very fortunate this year, and our luck continues after 2 very devastating years the past couple seasons in the Atlantic Basin. Here's Erika, the East Coast. Again, the waves are propagating on shore, so it's good for surfing, but again, you bathers be extra careful, especially with those rip currents along the southeast coast and Florida. What is saving us? Well, we've got a dip in the jet stream, which has been continuing, and that is focusing the steering winds in this direction, and that continues to keep Erika well offshore, and we don't have to deal with it. There it is. There are those winds, upper-level winds up around 25 to 30,000 feet, a lot of westerly wind, which is good news because if anything were to develop in the next several days, it wouldn't have a fighting chance to get anywhere near the East Coast or the Gulf Coast with the wind blowing in this direction. That is what has been really the factor all year. We've been discussing El Nino, stronger westerly winds, and that really prohibits anything from developing wind shear. Also, it keeps everything that would develop in the Atlantic off the coast. We've got this, which is Erika, which has kind of created its own area of high pressure. Other areas of high pressure, a little bit of one out here in the Atlantic along the intertropical convergence zone. We do have a